Welcome to an exploration of one of the most powerful forces shaping human thought, cognitive dissonance. When conflicting beliefs collide in our minds, they create a psychological tension that our brain desperately tries to resolve. Let's begin by understanding what cognitive dissonance actually is. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological discomfort we experience when we hold two contradictory beliefs, values, or attitudes simultaneously. This phenomenon was first formally described by psychologist Leon Festinger in 1957. When two contradictory beliefs exist in our mind, they create psychological tension that demands resolution. We can model dissonance as proportional to the sum of weighted differences between conflicting beliefs, where K is a constant, W represents the importance of each belief, and B represents belief strength. Our brain finds this tension deeply uncomfortable and automatically seeks ways to resolve it, often without our conscious awareness. There are three primary ways our brain resolves cognitive dissonance. The brain can resolve dissonance through three paths: changing the belief, changing the behavior, or rationalizing the contradiction away. The probability of changing a belief follows a sigmoid function based on how difficult or costly that change would be. The first path is to directly change one of the conflicting beliefs to eliminate the contradiction. The second path is to change the behavior that's creating the conflict with your beliefs. The third and most common path is rationalization, adding new thoughts or beliefs that justify the contradiction. Let's examine a classic example that illustrates how cognitive dissonance works in real life. Consider a smoker who knows smoking is deadly. This creates intense cognitive dissonance between the behavior of smoking and the knowledge of its dangers. Here's a critical question. How might a smoker resolve this uncomfortable psychological tension? Option 1. Quit smoking. This is the healthiest choice, but often the most difficult, requiring significant willpower and behavior change. Option 2. Rationalize by adding new beliefs that reduce the perceived conflict. Common rationalizations include: my grandfather smoked and lived long, life is short so enjoy it, stress from quitting is worse than smoking, or the research might be exaggerated. The total dissonance reduction equals the actual belief change plus the sum of all rationalizations added to justify the behavior. Let's look at the groundbreaking experiment that demonstrated cognitive dissonance. In this famous experiment, participants performed an extremely boring task for an hour, then were asked to lie to the next participant, saying the task was enjoyable. 3 groups were created. One paid $1 to lie, another paid $20 to lie, and a control group that wasn't asked to lie. Here's the fascinating question. Which group reported enjoying the boring task more afterward? Counterintuitively, the $1 group reported the highest enjoyment. The $20 group and control group reported low enjoyment. The $1 group had the highest enjoyment ratings because they experienced the most cognitive dissonance. Dissonance is inversely proportional to external justification. Less money means less justification for lying, creating more internal dissonance. With only $1 as justification for lying, participants resolved dissonance by actually convincing themselves the task was somewhat enjoyable. $20 provided sufficient external justification. They could tell themselves they lied only for the money, not experiencing dissonance. Modern neuroscience has identified the brain regions involved in cognitive dissonance. Brain imaging studies show 3 key regions activate during dissonance: the prefrontal cortex for reasoning, the anterior cingulate cortex detecting conflict, and the insula processing emotional discomfort. Neural activity in these regions correlates with conflict magnitude, where alpha represents sensitivity to conflict, and beta is baseline activity. The anterior cingulate cortex acts as a conflict detector, signaling when contradictions arise between beliefs or between beliefs and actions. Studies show that increased activity in these regions predicts whether someone will change their behavior or beliefs to resolve the dissonance. We can actually quantify how much dissonance a person experiences. Dissonance magnitude D equals importance I times ratio of dissonant to consonant cognitions R times 1 minus commitment level C. Importance ranges from 0 to 10, measuring how central these beliefs are to one's identity and worldview. R is the ratio comparing the number and strength of conflicting beliefs to supporting beliefs. Commitment ranges from 0 to 1, indicating how publicly or irrevocably committed someone is to the behavior. Example dissonance scores. Low importance beliefs create D equals 2, medium importance creates D equals 15, and high importance beliefs create D equals 40. Consider voting for a candidate who contradicts your core values. Let's calculate the dissonance. Suppose importance equals 8 out of 10. Ratio is 0.6 dissonant to consonant cognitions, and commitment is 0.9 after voting publicly. This gives D equals 8 times 0.6 times 0.1, which equals 0.48. The high commitment actually reduces felt dissonance. This demonstrates an important principle. High commitment to a decision actually reduces the dissonance we feel afterward as we become invested in justifying our choice. Understanding cognitive dissonance has profound real-world applications. Cognitive dissonance principles apply to marketing, politics, education, and therapy, shaping how we influence and understand human behavior. In marketing, the effort justification effect means consumers value products more when they've worked hard to obtain them, reducing post-purchase dissonance. In politics, voters experience dissonance when their chosen candidate contradicts their values, leading to extensive rationalization and belief adjustment. Students who struggle in their major often increase their commitment to it, justifying the difficulty rather than switching fields. Research shows commitment increases proportionally to effort invested raised to the 1.4 power, following a power law relationship. One dangerous consequence of cognitive dissonance is the backfire effect. Paradoxically, when people are confronted with evidence contradicting their beliefs often become stronger rather than weaker. Counter-evidence creates dissonance, which triggers defensive processing that actually strengthens the original belief through increased rationalization. New belief strength equals old belief strength plus a constant K times evidence strength E times resistance factor R. When R is negative, belief strengthens. This occurs because defending our beliefs becomes part of our identity. Admitting we were wrong threatens our self-concept. Research estimates that 60 to 75% of people show the backfire effect when core beliefs are challenged. Now the critical question: how can we become wiser thinkers by understanding cognitive dissonance? The first step is awareness. Simply knowing about cognitive dissonance makes us better able to recognize when we're experiencing it. Strategy 1. Learn to recognize the uncomfortable feeling of dissonance. It often manifests as defensiveness, irritation, or the urge to dismiss information. Strategy 2. When you notice yourself starting to rationalize, pause. Ask yourself if you're seeking truth or merely defending comfort. Ask yourself these key questions. Am I defending or discovering truth? What would change my mind? Am I cherry-picking evidence? What is the real cost of being wrong? Strategy 3. Embrace productive discomfort. The feeling of dissonance often signals an opportunity for growth and learning. Personal growth can be modeled as the integral of discomfort over time. The more discomfort we productively process, the more we grow. Strategy 4. Use pre-commitment strategies. Decide in advance what evidence would change your mind before you're in a defensive state. Strategy 5. Cultivate intellectual humility. Accept that being wrong is part of the learning process, not a threat to identity. Let's examine the mathematics of how we should update beliefs versus how we actually do. Bayes' theorem shows how we should update beliefs. The probability of hypothesis H given evidence E equals the probability of E given H times prior probability of H divided by probability of E. Bayesian updating represents the mathematically optimal way to change beliefs in response to new evidence. This graph compares Bayesian belief updating in blue versus actual human updating in red. Notice how humans update much more slowly, especially for cherished beliefs. Human belief updating equals alpha times the Bayesian update, where alpha is typically 0.2 to 0.5, meaning we update only 20 to 50% as much as we should. Research shows humans systematically under-update their beliefs by 50 to 80% compared to what Bayesian updating would prescribe. The updating coefficient alpha equals 0.2 plus 0.6 times 1 minus belief importance. More important beliefs resist updating more strongly. Cognitive dissonance operates not just individually but at the group level. Groups develop collective beliefs and experience collective dissonance when those beliefs are challenged, often responding more extremely than individuals. Research demonstrates that groups show stronger dissonance effects than individuals because social pressure and group identity amplify the discomfort. Group dissonance equals individual dissonance times 1 plus 0.3 times n, where n is the number of people sharing the belief. Echo chambers amplify dissonance reduction by surrounding people only with confirming information, making challenges to belief even more uncomfortable and rare. Social media dramatically accelerates group polarization by creating echo chambers where dissonant information is algorithmically filtered out. Let's examine what happens when strongly held predictions fail. In Festinger's famous study, When Prophecy Fails, he studied a cult that predicted the world would end on a specific date. When the prediction failed, rather than abandoning their beliefs, most members became more committed and began actively proselytizing. This raises a puzzling question. Why would a completely failed prediction actually strengthen rather than weaken belief? The answer lies in the enormous investment. Members had quit jobs, sold possessions, and sacrificed relationships. Admitting error was psychologically impossible. Belief strength after disconfirmation follows a logarithmic relationship with investment. The more invested, the stronger the belief becomes after failure. The group created a new rationalization. Their faith and prayers had been so strong that God decided to spare the world. This resolved the dissonance perfectly. Approximately 75% of the committed members maintained or even strengthened their beliefs after the prophecy failed. Understanding neuroplasticity reveals why changing beliefs is so difficult. Neural pathways strengthen with repeated activation. Long-held beliefs have created deep neural grooves that resist change. Neural pathway strength equals the integral over time of activation A at time tau, weighted by an exponential decay factor with rate lambda. Beliefs held for years or decades create extremely strong neural connections that fire automatically, requiring conscious effort to override. Research suggests approximately 10,000 repetitions are needed to form a deeply ingrained belief that resists change. However, neuroplasticity means change is always possible, as our brains can reorganize themselves by forming new connections.